Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I was not sure if I should just jump right in or if there's going to be any small form of introduction. I just ask my colleagues first if there's a preliminary statement that has to be made. I guess not.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you well.
Okay, very well. Well, I'll proceed. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you all for joining us today for the launch of the World Youth Report on Youth Social Entrepreneurship in the 2030 Agenda. As Stefan announced, my name is Elliot. I'm the Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development and the Chief Economist. I have here with me today, virtually of course, Ms. Pisana Rexha, a young social entrepreneur from Albania, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Pana Storytelling Furniture, the social enterprise she created in 2013. Let me start by sharing with you some information about the World Youth Report of 2020. Since the year 2003, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs has been preparing these World Youth Reports as a way of examining the situation of young people, providing insight into their needs, and of highlighting their role in advancing sustainable development. When we prepare a World Youth Report, we consult with young people. We ask them what issues are of particular importance to them. This year, the young people told us that they are especially concerned with the unemployment crisis. However, the young people do not just stop at sharing information about an issue that they are facing. They also offer solutions and describe actions that they're taking already to help to address these issues. This active spirit of young people can be felt in this year's World Youth Report, which is on youth social entrepreneurship and the 2030 Agenda. And to illustrate this, I'd like to share with you a few of the key findings of this report. First, the evidence is quite clear. The traditional job creation will not be enough to resolve the long-standing youth unemployment crisis. The number of young people who are not in employment, education, or training has remained stubbornly high at over 20% for the last 2 decades. It is an entire generation that is being impacted by this crisis. With the COVID-19 crisis now resulting in millions of newly unemployed people globally, the job market will become even more challenging for young people. Even before the pandemic, we were already falling behind in creating the estimated 600 million jobs that are required in the next 15 years to meet the youth unemployment needs. The situation post-crisis will be decidedly more difficult. We clearly need to do things differently, and the young people are already doing so. Across the globe, and especially in developing countries, where most of the world's young population lives, micro, small, and medium enterprises account for the largest share of job creation. Young people see in this an opportunity to create their own forms of employment. And yet, young people not only want to do well economically, they also want to do good socially. They want to support the communities around them, and they often want to help those who are most marginalized. For young people, social entrepreneurship often represents an opportunity to do meaningful work that makes the world a better place. For quite a while now, young people have been leading the way in helping to address complex global challenges such as climate change, peace and security, gender equality, social inclusion, etc. And we've seen this very clearly in the last few weeks in the crowds of young people peacefully protesting against racism and other forms of discrimination all around the world. The second key finding of the report is indeed that young social entrepreneurs are community leaders, and they are leading by example. While social entrepreneurship is a viable path toward employment development or empowerment, it also contributes to the inclusion of the most marginalized communities. As young social entrepreneurs employ and apply the principles that they promote, these entrepreneurs are leading by example, and they generate broader societal benefits such as inclusion, solidarity, reciprocity, trust, and cohesion. However, the report also finds that the power of young social entrepreneurship has not yet fully unleashed. Clearly, young people who pursue social entrepreneurship often face obstacles that prevent them from achieving a sustainable livelihood. Unless action is taken to address the barriers to youth social entrepreneurship, as well as youth employment and development more generally, neither young people nor their communities will realize their full potential. In many cases, for example, regulations and policies prevent young people from accessing all of the resources they need to start and to grow social enterprises. This negative effect inadvertent, perhaps, but it is nonetheless an obstacle. These obstacles are varied, and they can include the lack of access to funding, training, technical support, networks, and markets. Several of these obstacles are age-related, such as the minimum age to open a bank account in some countries, or needing to own land or a house in order to secure a business loan, these being assets that sometimes take an entire lifetime to acquire. Other obstacles disproportionately impact young women, young migrants, rural young people, and they're often linked to stereotypes or to false perceptions. We need to remove these obstacles to youth entrepreneurship in order to allow them the space to realize their full potential. Research shows that there is a negative correlation between a country's ease of doing business ranking, this is the World Bank Index that we're all familiar with, and the number of young people who are not in employment, education, or training. In the report, we explicitly discuss the fact that a business environment that is more accommodating to startups and that better supports the growth of existing enterprises is usually associated with a higher rate of realization of youth potential, especially in terms of employment. The report also underscores that social entrepreneurship is not only about employment and social impact, it is also about youth participation and empowerment. As young people are often excluded from traditional engagement platforms, especially in the political sphere, they are creating alternative avenues to implement their own ideas and to help to mobilize change in their societies. The report makes clear that social entrepreneurship is not a path for all people, all young people, but for those who take this path, it can become an alternative avenue for meaningful participation and empowerment. And these are indeed key aspects of youth development. And finally, the report makes clear that policymakers must renew their commitment toward young people, toward youth employment and youth development. Active youth social entrepreneurship does not release policymakers at any level from their obligations with regard to youth. Youth social entrepreneurship is not a catch-all solution, rather it is part of what should be a comprehensive approach to addressing youth employment and youth development. The last chapter of the report includes a series of highly actionable policy recommendations that are critical to the development of an environment that would not only remove the obstacles faced by young social entrepreneurs, but it would also leverage their individual and collective agency for the realization of the 2030 agenda. It is quite a challenge for me to share only a few of the many findings from this report. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my team in the Division for Inclusive Social Development, who've been working on preparing this report for the past number of months, and extend a special note of thanks to the authors who contributed to the report. On that note, I'd like to end my statement by encouraging you all to read the report in detail and to use it as a tool to start conversations with young people. And I have the distinct privilege of being able to do that right now, start a conversation with young people by inviting you to listen to Ms. Pisana Rexa, who has contributed significantly to this year's World Youth Report, thanks to her rich experience as a social entrepreneur in Albania. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Pisana, for your presentation of your experience running a little business in Albania.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. I would like to introduce me and how I created PANA for a specific reason, so you can understand how social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurs' brain works, at least. My name is Pezan and I'm an architect in profession. Since the age of 18, I have always created enterprises that didn't succeed. And that's good because then I could learn a lot of things. 7 years ago, I was working with orphans and children with special ability through animal-assisted therapy, a therapy that could give love and to these children. But then I understood that with projects, you cannot change people's life. Employment and a decent place of work is the only way to bring change to someone's dignity and quality with other people. And meanwhile, my father got retired, so I could see the energy and desire that he had as an engineer to give it to the others. But usually in Albania, and I think this is almost everywhere, people see retired people as people of not being able to work or to give their knowledge, and usually they see them as people who play domino. So, as an architect, I saw the need in the market for very unique design furniture that could protect nature. So the idea was to create a workshop where I could produce unique design furniture by reusing the wooden waste that is already in the market and employing retired people and orphans. So I could manage to create an ecosystem where people could give their knowledge to each other and give a hand and share love, because elderly people can do that and they want to do it, and meanwhile orphans need it. This was the start 7 years ago. A lot of things have changed. Meanwhile, I got to learn what social entrepreneurship is, and that I created a model without even knowing it. And we have gone through a lot, and it has having ups and downs, but we have made it happen. We now are 14 employees from different marginalized groups with special abilities, from Roma and Egyptian community, retired, and now I'm trying to put inside women, that it's quite difficult in furniture production. We have had a lot of recognition and winning a lot of prizes nationally and internationally, recognized for the innovation that we have brought in the social entrepreneurship and in the furniture production. Usually it's not perceived as a normal type of business. So when it comes to investments and other kind of help, it's almost impossible. And this is not only for Albania, because I had the opportunity to go beyond that. But meanwhile, I think everyone in the world is lucky enough to see so many social entrepreneurs that are awakening and trying to bring change, because social entrepreneurship is a way to bring change for people and for nature. There is no social entrepreneur there or enterprise that is not dealing with both of these elements. What we have learned during this very specific moment that we are living in is that people need to collaborate. Equality and love are the most important things. And social entrepreneurship has been doing it for the last years, and nobody even noticed it. Social entrepreneurship is the only mechanism who brings collaboration, equality, and love to the people that they are working and to the nature. So thank you very much for having me here, and I hope it will change for us.
Thank you, Pizana. And Elliot, I apologize. My brain is a little fried, and I left the briefing leaving you in the lurch. So please, it's part of the COVID cabin fever. I think we're all getting a little forgetful. And Pizana, thank you. And again, I apologize to you as well. Great. We'll go, Edie, if you want to go on behalf of Anka, or otherwise I know Majid has a question.
Thank you very much to Elliot and Pizana on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. Thank you very much for doing this briefing. I have a question for Pizana. You said that your program has gotten a lot of impact awards, whatever. Have you been able to actually spur social entrepreneurs to take up any kind of projects that have similar kinds of goals and aims in other countries? And, you know, if so, isn't that something that the United, and to Mr. Harris, isn't that something that the United Nations should be promoting?
In fact, I have been so much in every conference, every workshop, every competition, every kind of activity that has to deal with social enterprise and social entrepreneurship. And in fact, I think the struggle has not been the social entrepreneurs. The struggle has been the bureaucracy in the way things have worked until now. And this is not about the UN. I'm talking about every other institution that is trying to bring to life social entrepreneurship, but meanwhile is giving the right items or solutions or money even. I do strongly believe that we have made changes, each of us, but each of us in very small amount and alone, because we have struggles, everyday struggles that doesn't allow us to collaborate with each other. Because if I have to collaborate and go to US and give my example, I need some support in my country. So the enterprise continues. So I think it's not, we are ready. Social entrepreneurs have always been ready, but the system is not ready yet. And that's why I strongly believe that these kind of systems that are there need to hear us, so they understand that we run. We don't have time to wait and to walk like slowly like a turtle.
What would be the most important change that you think would be needed to actually spur much quicker adoption or approvals of these programs?
I think we need to create examples of, we call them unicorns, of people, social entrepreneurs, to bring them to the next level. Because there are a lot of enterprises that have the potential to be big. Not all of us should be big, but there are social enterprises that can be big. So we need to help some of them to be big enough and to make it fancy and lovable so everyone could follow. We need unicorns. I strongly believe that we need unicorns.
And Mr. Harris?
Yeah, thank you very much. I wasn't able to unmute myself. No, I think you've touched on a very good point here, but I think it's not just about social entrepreneurs, nor is it only about young entrepreneurs. In the developing world context in particular, it's about entrepreneurship generally. In many respects, there are conditions in place that make it very difficult for somebody who has an idea to translate that idea into a viable concern. Yeah? And we talk about that in the report. Pizana has talked about it as well, that there are obstacles. They may be inadvertent, but they're there. And that could be, I think, part of the role of the United Nations. The UN is not going to be able to go out and take over the job of doing the entrepreneurship, no. But it can call attention to regulations that perhaps have that inadvertent negative effect, that make it difficult for a young person to come in and translate an idea into a viable economic concern. We can also point to some of the problems that young people have, and individual private entrepreneurs more generally have, in getting access to financing. For all that we know that we have to be prudent in granting bank loans, we also have to understand that some of the demands for collateral that banks insist upon effectively exclude wide swaths of the population from ever having access to formal financing. And that is a major constraint. And that's, I think, part of the role that the UN can play. We are aware of what has worked well in development in the past in other parts of the world. We can bring those lessons into the given country context, and through the interface with government authorities, with local authorities, but also with entrepreneurs like Pezana and with business associations and the financial sector, we can try to raise the profile of those issues that are problems, those things that are preventing the development of entrepreneurship and preventing also the expansion of employment and development opportunities for young people.
Yes, thank you, Stefan.
Majid, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for the briefing. Mr. Harris, I want to ask you a question that I asked about 2 months ago, and I want to ask again. Ask you again as a UN chief economist, which is what has changed ever since 2 months, which is the price of oil. And the impact this crisis has on the price of oil. As you know, it's a major, causing major crisis right now in the countries that depend on oil. What is, I know it's almost impossible to have exact predictions about oil, but I want to know what is the data that you have so far, and are you more optimistic about recovery in oil market anytime soon in 2020? Thank you.
Well, again, I think, Majid, the biggest issue that prevents us from making any kind of firm prognosis is the general uncertainty around this whole crisis. If we could say the crisis, the health crisis, will end by the end of, let's say, a given month, and that economic activity would then start to recover, well, then we could make an assumption about how quickly economic activity would return to regular levels and the implications that would have for energy demand. But we don't have that kind of certainty. What we see happening in the country where I'm sitting in right now is that the economic activity had been gradually liberated. People were going back out, and now we see a flare-up of infections. We don't know whether we'll be able to sustain that reopening or whether we'll have to go back into a slightly more restricted stance. But all of that impacts upon the total amount of energy that's being demanded, and that is what has driven the oil price down. And a real recovery of the oil price will not happen until the overall level of economic activity comes back up to levels that approach what we had before the crisis. And so I think that big uncertainty is one of the major problems that every government is facing right now as it tries to figure out, well, what should we do to deal with this crisis, because we don't know how long we'll have to make these exceptional interventions. But beyond all of that, I think I would be remiss in not saying that we have another trend of development that's happening, which also works against the oil market, which is that we all have to confront the need to decarbonize our societies. For very obvious reasons, I don't have to go into them here. It's quite clear that as we move more and more towards renewable energy sources, we're not going to expect the oil market to be exactly what it was in previous decades. And I think that is something that we have to confront and understand that it's very, very difficult with all of these trends that are moving in different directions. It's difficult to say this is going to be the determinate path of oil markets and oil prices and the demand for oil in the future.
Thank you very much. Bill Riley for Xinhua. Bill, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, sorry. All right, thank you very much. And again, I apologize to Pisana and to Elliot for my oversight. I think
not a problem.
I'm in need of coffee and and to be able to go outside a little bit.
Yeah.
So thank you all, and have a great end of the day. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
And thank you very much, Pisana, for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you as well.